It really comes down to if you understand your business process, you understand the quality of your data, and you understand the functionality and utility of the AI that you're trying to adopt, then I think you've got a good chance at it being successful. If you're just doing it because of FOMO and you want to put it in because it's all the rage, then I think it's going to fail. Shows we're picking the wrong problems, we're picking the wrong areas. The FOMO, I think, is causing people to overestimate the ability of the AI, and then they get to the end of the POC and go, oh, it didn't really deliver what we assumed it would. So there's an old recruitment and HR adage, which is you hire for skills and you fire for personality. So I do it the other way around, hire for personality and train the skills. I think it is super overhyped, and at some point we're going to look back like the MIT NANDA report and go, we've spent billions of dollars or trillions of dollars as a global economy on this thing, and it's really not made money for anyone other than...
Hey everyone, Pete Inch here, and today on Factory Fireside, I'm joined by Peter Worthington-Eyre, South Australia's first ever Chief Data Officer and a heavyweight when it comes to transforming data into real business value. We go deep on why most organisations still aren't ready for AI and how to fix it, and we unpack why 95% of AI pilots fail, the danger of chasing shiny tech, and why your next hire should be based on personality, not skill. And we finish on a fiery take on whether AI is really worth the hype. It's a brilliant episode. Get notepads out for some of the key insights Peter delivers. Pete, I've been really excited about this session. Now, obviously, Sasha, Matt, Ozzy used to work with you guys and they speak very highly about what you've done as a leader, practitioner within the data and AI space. Now, within Factory Fireside, we always open up with what we call opening fire. This one is really structured around the work you've done in government's readiness for the adoption of AI. We hear a lot of stuff. We see the AI Venture Fund. Do you believe, with your background in government, that the government is ready to adopt and drive the adoption of AI?
That is a challenging question. I think government's a big beast. Yeah. So I think government itself is really hard to talk about because there's so many different agencies and departments and areas. I think as a data practitioner, and you're just going to smile and nod at this as well, it really comes down to if you understand your business process, you understand the quality of your data, and you understand the functionality and utility of the AI that you're trying to adopt, then I think you've got a good chance at it being successful. If you're just doing it because of FOMO and you want to put it in because it's all the rage, then I think it's going to fail. And government really doesn't do FOMO. You can see federally we're looking at AI guardrails and ethical use of AI. So I think they're going to be more of a later adopter than an early adopter. So I think there's pockets that people are ready, but the bigger conversations happen around social and human in the loop and making sure that we're not automating decisions with AI. That said, we already have got examples of it working. So EdChat or EdChat that education department use, my kids use it as well. So kind of a closed LLM type model, it works really well. And so I think getting the younger generation involved in AI early is a really great step. I think we were the first jurisdiction to do it. So we've actually already got some runs on the board. But I think the meatier things around, will AI replace humans in government? I think we are such a long way off. And given the sort of service that government provides, which was once put to me by, I think, the current premier, that we do all the really difficult jobs. We're running into the burning down houses. We're going to the people that are having health emergencies. We're helping people that have safety concerns, protecting the environment. Like, we do all of those really challenging jobs. Most of them need people. So I think that augmenting of what we do with AI, there are some pockets that we could start to explore. Government generally will take these things pretty cautiously and slowly.
Yeah, look, that's great. And I don't know if you've read it. I just read the AI 2027.
No,
it is the existential end for humanity. If you want an interesting read about the evolution of AI and agents and where it's all going. Obviously, the precursor to that was pretty on point. But I kind of read this, and the whole theme, I guess the cliff notes, is that, agentic capability evolves to a point where it effectively results in the downfall of humanity. And I'm listening to that. Part of that is this portion where all decision-making and capability is handed over to the agents and there's mass job displacement within sort of the next 12. And I just sit there and I think, okay, that's been written by somebody that's never actually worked in an organisation.
Correct.
A unionised workforce, bureaucracy, it just doesn't move that fast, right? And so, I'm kind of with you on that as well. I think the technology is moving at a great pace, but it's going to take organisations of all kinds time to just catch up, right?
Definitely. And the technology is not there. Like, let's not pretend that it is. I was using one of the chat agents and said, look, can you put my face in this photo on this background? Yeah. And it did the opposite. And they said, oh, so sorry. So what you want is your face on that background. Yes. Do you want to change the lighting? No, I just want this. Yeah. And it gave me the same photo back 6 times.
Yeah.
And I think, we shouldn't pretend that the technology is already there. And on your earlier point, Anton van den Henkel, who you should definitely get on here one day, head of the Australian Institute for Machine Learning, gave a great presentation a few years ago saying he'd gone back to, I think, the 1960s and said that it had always been predicted that within 20 years, technology would take all of our jobs back in the 60s and then the 80s and the 2000s and the 2010s. And it never did. The workforce has grown every single year. So I don't think it's going to be this big doom and gloom. But also what concerns me the most is that all the data that exists right now is a fraction of what really happened and it all reflects the past. So if we're putting all of our eggs in the basket that some agentic AI is going to come in and take all of our jobs, it just can't. And the other lesson that I certainly learned in a former job was we tried to automate a business process, and trying to convince management and the board that we should do it was going to mean that we had to sign off that there'd be a percentage of invalid transactions. Yeah. And everyone went, we can't do that. What do you mean? You want us to sign off that we're actually going to do something wrong? Yeah. I said, but you didn't ask me the question you should have asked, which is how many do we get wrong now? And every time there's a new technology, we put a higher bar on that technology. And so I think if we're really aware of current state, like truly, and then we can put in AI that's going to give us a better result, which might not be perfect because it's not perfect now, then fantastic. But if we're just going to look at the AI bit and say, oh, well, we put this in and it's wrong. Yeah. It's like, well, how much are we getting wrong now? Like, we never actually measure that. So I think the organizations that can do that are the ones that are going to start to see the benefit. But is it really going to replace a person? Yeah. I don't know.
Just to pick up on a couple of things, I completely agree that, we judge outcomes of AI by this binary good, bad, right?
Correct.
And when you default to what is incumbent in decision making, like it's generally a vast step up in capability, but just getting people comfortable with accepting that, which kind of leads into the second point I just wanted to pick up on what you were talking about is when, the face example in the background, it might sound like a trivial example, but if you're talking about mass job displacement and you're talking about replacing humans that make decisions with a human is accountable for this decision, and I've got an agent workflow that has a whole bunch of decision points, if it's making trivial mistakes, then they get baked into the agentic workflow and those trivial mistakes are going to persist. And so I agree with you. We actually had a really interesting example in one of the agentic solutions that we have for data migrations is that this is when GPT-5 came in. Now, I got shit canned a bit, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I read the system card and saw what they were working on. I think there's some big advantage. When we moved to the GPT-5 models, a few of our workflows broke, and it was because they were putting in tighter controls around hallucinations and what was being passed from agent to agent. And this was a good evolution because previously it just worked. And then when the new model came in with tighter guardrails, it didn't. And so we thought that was a good evolution, but it's one of those blind spots that you don't have because you're not kind of necessarily looking at the inner workings of that stuff.
Correct. And I think where we've got high volume, repeatable processes, I mean, they have been automated now. So automotive manufacturing used to be really manual. Then we get machines and SCADA systems that can control those. And we've got, okay, well, we can actually extrude this piece of metal or press it. And then you've got Tesla forming cars every, whatever it is, 90 seconds. So I think those things make a lot of sense. But that, to your first question, that's not really the role of government. We don't really make things. Yeah. So we need to, I guess, horses for courses, make sure that we're applying the right technology the right way with the right risk tolerance and also that there's incompleteness of data. So if you're making something, you know the parameters. size, dimensions, shape, this should be 3 mil and this 18-degree curve or whatever it is. But when we're dealing with people, we only really have a fraction of the information because all of this life happens. And say in a health example, someone rocks up at an ED and they work out that they're having a heart attack, myocardial infarction. They'll do that. They'll take your troponin levels and do a whole bunch of testing. But what they didn't see is, well, how many other heart attacks have you had that you didn't come to the hospital for? And some people go, oh, well, I've had it. Actually, it's been going for years and I didn't report it. So the data set that's in our health system is patient rocks up, gets these blood levels, had a heart attack. What's missing is all of the things before. So you're not going to put AI over that because it doesn't even have the data that exists. And that's why I think the use cases that we're trying to put it to are really, really important. And then the consequence. So that photo example, who cares? I'll just do it myself in Photoshop, no consequence. But when we're starting to automate decisions and those trivial errors that compound or they're hidden and we don't know what they are, I think that's the real challenge. Doesn't mean we won't get there. I think we will. But when we do, my bet would be it'll be augmented, not overtaking, because the dream that IT that I've been in arguably for well over 30 years, as I'm sure you have, is that, look, it's just going to automate everything, make your job easier. Yeah. I mean, who says that? You come in and go, oh, this spreadsheet's not working. I'm waiting for this change in this system and, oh, that's broken and this is down and sorry, our website's down for maintenance. And it's made things more complicated. And no one's sitting on the beach sipping pina coladas saying, well, the computer's doing all my work. So look, if we get there, fantastic. But I think it's a little way away.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things, we talk about use cases and driving value. Now, you were the first Chief Data Officer for South Australian Government and set the Office of Data and Analytics. Now, when you think about government and all the stuff government does across all the agencies, going in kind of greenfield to start that practice, where did you start?
Very good question. So the short answer is I was lucky that we had a crisis that was a horrible crisis, but we had a crisis as our starting point and a really visionary Attorney General who was actually the minister for our workers' comp department as well, where I was working at the time, and put two and two together and saw actually we could apply the techniques that are being done here to help find vulnerable kids and look at cumulative harm instead of incidents and a whole bunch of things that came out of a Royal Commission that had just landed. So I guess we had the catalyst and the burning platform sitting there, but his foresight meant that he didn't say, well, let's just fix child protection. He said, well, if we're going to do that, we should do it for the whole lot and put in, which I helped with quite a big smart team, write the most permissive data sharing legislation in Australia. I don't know if it's the most permissive in the world. I haven't looked at all the legal frameworks around the world, but I would say it's definitely up there. That overrode all of the state legislation that prohibits sharing, put in a whole bunch of safeguards, but pragmatic ones, and set up what was my office at the time to look at whole of government service delivery, operations and performance in areas of cross-government need. So I guess we had the entry point from that crisis, but it was a tough gig. We had a lot of mistrust. I think a lot of people were worried about legal ramifications, and I guess we can talk about it later, but my experience working across jurisdictions and with the Commonwealth, those delays are very costly. They take years while people are worried about, we're going to get this wrong, and things like robo-debt compound people's fear. There was also one that surprised me a little, which was it wasn't that people were reluctant to share information. They were worried that someone else would misinterpret it because they're collecting it under different law and different business process and they know what it means. But if they just give the raw data to someone else and they come up with these findings that are not quite right, it spurs a whole bunch of activity for them. So we had to mitigate those. But we had that first task that helped a fair bit. Lots and lots of meetings. Lots and lots of training, I guess, on what it meant. Being both ignorant and apolitical at the time, I went through all of the parliamentary debate and addressed all of the different concerns that had come up from both sides of government because I thought that's what I should do, which involved security and misuse of data and built an environment that could be trusted both by the public under whatever level of scrutiny we needed, by other agencies that we would show over time would never misuse their data or do anything without their permission, and then consistently demonstrate that over time. Because I was always taught and a big believer that if you had to have a formula for trust, it's small agreements kept consistently over time. And that's what we had to do. Very hard to get, very quick to lose is that trust. So we went as, I guess, quickly as we could, given the pace that everyone else needed to go with, met everyone where they're at. I hope they'd say that, and brought them on that journey to do it. We had a lot of doubters. People thought it wasn't possible, both technically, which we know, of course, we can bring data together and link it up, but will it be useful legally, and then also operationally? Was it going to actually provide value?
Yeah.
So the short answer is I was gifted with a crisis and a platform, and I guess we had the trifecta of things all coalescing at the same time that meant it was the right thing at the right time, and we had a burning platform to help drive that.
Yeah, burning platform is great to start your program. Bunch of stuff on there I want to unpack, and we will through
Let's do it.
Through the conversation. I just want to look at how you move forward from there. Like I said, you've got a prime use case to start. There's urgency. There's social well-being, all those things at risk to driving that crisis. As you continue your program and you grow the team, picking the right projects to work on, maybe just talk us through, and this is really relevant for like a lot of people trying to drive data and AI programs, and I see it all the time, is you just don't pick the right initiatives that are, one, going to deliver some sort of strategic outcome for the organization, or two, are going to be adopted by people downstream. Maybe just walk through your framework for how you identify initiatives and turn them into pieces of work.
I wish I could give you a formula because it's a common question. I think from the outset, it's got to be do no harm, but also do good. So for me, my real driver is impact. Chief Data Officer really doesn't mean anything, because on one hand, you've got a Chief Data Officer title and they're a BI developer, data warehouse creator. Yeah. And on the other extreme, you've got a Chief Data Officer that's right hand to the CEO driving decision making. And I'm more on that end, but I can do this end too. So I think it's where you position it. If you're on this end and they're not obviously black and white, I've seen them go down a service mentality, which is, well, let's ask the business what their problems are. And that tends to be the IT model and mindset is, well, who are we to dictate what the business want?
We'll give them a faster horse.
We'll give them a faster horse because, can we breed faster horses? Yes. Do we have faster horses? Okay, we can get them, and here you go, here's a faster horse. But the true story, which Daniel Priestley talks about really well, is that at the time on the faster horse, no one wanted a car because you had to build a garage and they were slow and you had to walk in front with a red flag. But over time, now no one wants a horse. So how do you do that first bit? And I think it's a bit of push and pull inside a business, whereas we were looking across all the agencies, which is even more complicated. There are going to be some low-hanging fruit projects that you can demonstrate. And I know that's what everyone says. How do you find them? In my experience, it's not by asking the business. It's by delving into the data and asking smart and also stupid questions, because there's no such thing as a stupid question or a smart question, right? And, hey, look, I found this with an inquiry mindset. What does that mean? That's really interesting. What if we found more of those? And I think back to one of my earlier uses of data, and we had a contractual service level. It wasn't being met at the level that we wanted it to be. So every morning I ran the data and I went and sat down next to someone and said, hey, Pete, this issue, could you sort that out today? Oh, I don't see why not. Great. If you could do that, that'd be fantastic. Never mentioned data, never mentioned reporting. Came down, can we talk about this? Yeah, no worries. Can you show me where that's up to? Okay. Is there anything I can do to help you get this done today? Oh, no, I can get it done. All right, great. And we went from what was, I think, 70% to 96% in a month. That's using data and also helping people and demonstrating, well, actually, there might be something in this. That gave us a bit of credibility and permission to then play with some other areas and start to analyze performance in the way that people wanted to see it. So we do reporting for our clients and not to say, you had this many and it cost this much. Anyone can do that. But we said, well, if you were to invest this, then it's likely you're going to save this much. Do you want to give it a go? And here's all the maths and here's the formulas. You can work it out yourself. I said, okay, we did it. And we saved the client $500,000. Those little things, then those sort of, one percenters or whatever you want to call them, then buy you the credibility to do the bigger things. Picking the right project, never waste a crisis, capitalize on the concerns of whoever's going to make the decision. Whether that's the coup, the CEO, the board, what's bugging them, can I use data to help fix that? But I think there's also the really hard bit, which is you have to have a belief that what you're doing is right. Get lots of people to challenge you and validate it, and then just go full bore on it, even if you think that everyone's going to disagree. And government's extra hard because the whole system fights you the whole way, because you've got different ministers in different agencies, in different departments with different legislation, and all have their own budgets. And I remember when I started in government, what would have been 20 years ago, someone sent me this Dilbert comic, and someone storms into the boss office and said, "Oh, we found a way to save $1 million." And the boss is like, "Great, let me have a look." Has a look at it and goes, "Hang on a minute. What you're saying is they save $1 million, but we have to spend $10,000.
Yeah.
That's not feasible."
Yeah.
And the guy on the other side says, "Well, what would our shareholders say?" I said, "Well, that's why they're not invited to meetings."
Yeah.
And you think about that.
Yeah.
That's the challenge additionally that we've got to fight in a cross-government environment that you don't have in a private sector entity. And so how did I go about it? And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It was lots of conversations, lots of unpacking problems, reading. There's lots of reviews and royal commissions and things sitting out there in the public domain. You can say, these are real problems identified by other people that we've validated, getting ministers on board and really getting one or two key people in the different agencies you want to work in to believe in your mission, and always having that humble approach. We're not the expert. What would you know about our information? And we're not trying to profess to be, but also if we don't try something new, we're always going to be in the same position we're in now. In terms of a secret formula, I guess in government, Professor Fiona Stanley has her framework, which I love, which is that you need a ministerial champion, you need a bureaucratic champion, you need the media on side, a researcher who can then give you that credibility independently, and then the stakeholders, so the community group. If you've got all five, I think you've got a good project. And we can unpack it later, but one that we did in my team following the tragic fatality of 2 kids was work with a former police commissioner to identify similar children, which resulted in welfare checks of over 500 children and a number of those kids being removed straight away because they were in unsafe conditions. Because we had the burning platform and we had this cross-agency information, we're able to pull that out quickly. The social license was really given to us because no one in the public was saying, well, you shouldn't do that. That's not a good use of information. They were saying, good, and I'm glad that you checked those kids, and we're glad that the majority were not at risk. So capitalize that opportunity. Some things are going to land in your lap and some things are just a really, really hard grind. And I know later we're going to talk about things that didn't land. And I think the hard thing is some of the things that you start, you're never going to see. It's like planting bamboo. I think it takes years before it starts to shoot and then it grows in a week. You hope that you planted enough of those seeds that when you're not there or someone else comes in and says, hey, we've got the capability, that those things grow, but it's not going to happen on your time frame.
Look, it's a really interesting one. And there's, again, lots of bits that we'll kind of unpack through this but a lot of the things some of the things you talked about, like big, massive projects with a lot of stakeholder, more sort of strategic projects that take long time frames. If you just saw the NANDA report that came out from MIT about generative AI, and I think it tells an interesting, like the theme of it tells a pretty interesting message where like 95% of things in this space are not really landing a P&L impact. There's lots of people kind of investigating, people piloting, and very few stuff actually making it through into production. Now, a lot of this is driven by the kind of POC pilot culture within businesses. 2 questions in here to consider as you respond. So one is the idea of running POCs in this space, and with the massive failure rates, how you think about and approach those POCs effectively. Maybe we'll start with that one. If you
sure. So I think, number one, that some people are treating AI like Microsoft Office when they should be treating it as a new employee. It's a different thing to normal technology or traditional technology. I think it comes down to a couple of things. One is we need to treat it for what it is. It's a tool, and that's it. So how do we work out whether that tool is useful for us? And one of the analogies that I've used before is it's like an ice pick. If you show a picture and people go, what's that? I don't know. Is that a hammer? It's an ice pick. So who's that useful to? Well, someone who's an ice climber, pretty important. But you give it to this person and they're a sculptor and they'll make this amazing, incredible ice sculpture for you. You give it to me and I've got no ability to do either of those things. It's kind of a useless thing for me to even have. So the tool's got to fit the purpose. And sometimes, instead of using it for ice climbing, you could use it to make a sculpture. Fantastic. But you're not going to use that to walk your dog. So when we're picking these POCs, I think it's about, like any technology, those earlier points that we were talking about around making sure that you know your data quality and your business process, they're really critical. I think all R&D, with some limitations, gives you an answer, right? And we shouldn't stop doing that. But we should be designing the POCs around real problems where we know we've got the data that can support what we're trying to do. We're picking the right type of AI and that there is a pathway when it's met certain criteria to implement. And the hardest thing is taking those POCs and productionizing them.
Yeah.
So
just 95% is a big number.
It is huge.
So just to, I guess, unpack that a little bit there is that, because I hear the fail fast culture all the time. Yeah, fail fast, we'll do stuff. But if the number's 95%, then I'm kind of challenging the fail fast culture in there a little bit. And so when you're thinking about a POC from the outset, one, you've got to get the right initiative, and two, you've got to have a mindset beyond the initiative. And you just sort of started to touch in there, and I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this. Is what is it that's stopping these POCs get kind of beyond the initial pilot phase in here? Like, is it technology? Is it the strategic alignment? Is it lack of adoption? Is it that you've just got vendors and people coming in with a hammer and everything, trying to find a nail in there? Just keen to get your thoughts on what it is that's preventing that barrier of things getting to production, and how you think businesses need to think about that.
I think that Charles Kettering that said a problem well defined is a problem half solved. Yeah. We've got to pick the right problems, number one, and not just take the FOMO factor. Boards and CEOs are saying, oh, we've got to get into this AI thing, everyone else is. But do you? And I think really designing that properly up front is so critical, looking at total cost of ownership, because businesses don't really measure that. They say they do, but they don't. So if we've got a process that executes 100 times a year, get a person to do it. Because by the time you even talk about a business case and a POC, you're going to blow more money than you're going to spend in 10 years with a manual process. There's no point. I think really defining the success criteria and getting that right risk tolerance. So a good friend and mentor of mine, his framework for that is, well, let's start with yes. So the answer is, should we do this? Yeah. But, and what are the buts? And we'll do as much as we can to define the buts up front. Yeah. But when you've ticked off those buts, all that's left is yes. So we don't want to invent new barriers when we finish the POC to why we can't put the technology in. But I think the 95% rate to me shows we're picking the wrong problems. We're picking the wrong areas. The FOMO, I think, is causing people to overestimate the ability of the AI. And then they get to the end of the POC and go, oh, it didn't really deliver what we assumed it would, and they stop. But the original premise shouldn't have changed, because if it is, we need to redefine this process and do things better and faster and more efficiently, then maybe they should keep going, but maybe AI is not the tool they need. So I think really designing those up front is important. Plus, I'm not sure we've got an excellent example. I'm happy for you to challenge me on that, but I'm not sure we do. And I'll be careful not to pick examples because I don't want to say anything negative about what people have done. That said, I'll give you one. The ATO's Ask Alex chatbot, one of the earlier adoptions of LLMs and chatbots in the Commonwealth. It's good. It's a navigator. It's almost like paperclip in Microsoft Word back in the day. Clippy. I want to find this. And it points you to the forum or points you to the page. It's great. But my expectation is I should be able to authenticate with that service and then it can answer questions about me. Yeah. How do I claim for this expense that you can see over here? Oh, well, here's the tax ruling. Yeah. So, but that's on me, right? Because I know what the capability is and I'm expecting that level of service out of what's there. But if their success criteria was actually, we've got a whole bunch of people that can't find anything on our website and it's complicated, there's a million pages on there of tax information and this is helping the majority. What a great success story. So our success metric also has to be realistic for that. And I think we need to go at the pace that the public or your clients are willing to accept. If you can bring all of that together, then I'd hope you get a better number than 5% success rate. But I also don't want to say that we shouldn't be doing R&D because we need to try these new things, and failure itself is an answer. Not now, wrong process, overestimated the ability of the technology, put it on hold, wait for the technology to catch up, do it again.
And I think you look at the journeys. I mean, if you would have gone through the machine learning days as well, where there was a lot of hype, top of the hype cycle there for a long time, and people were building a lot of offline models, but very few kind of making it through the journey to production. And the reality, there was just a massive learning curve for organizations about how do you can build a model offline and it can work, but getting that thing through testing into production in a sustainable way with all the ML ops wrapped around it and knowing that it's degrading and I need to retrain it. And it's like, that's a huge journey. Correct. And so a lot of it just took time for the community to be able to do that. And I take like product companies and companies that are built from the ground up with technology, which is a very small proportion of them, but constitute about 99% of the content on LinkedIn. It just took a long time for the other organizations that are not technology companies at their core to be able to build the infrastructure, to have the right people in place, to understand the methodologies, to be able to push these through. And even now, the footprint of effectively deployed ML models within normal organizations is still pretty low.
It is.
And so we're at the dawn and the genesis of this new LLM wave that I think we're still in the process of just understanding how to use this stuff most effectively. And if I think about penetration of this stuff into enterprises, where it's actually going to make an impact, and you think about agents and how agents work in there, is that a lot of where I've seen, where we've been called in to work on this stuff, is that we go in and we just think about the process and we try to automate it. We'll put an agent here, we'll do a little bit here, do a bit there. And the problem is that you're looking at that process because it's probably broken.
Right.
And so we go in and we just try to layer LLMs and agency over the top of a broken process. It's just not the way to do it. Like RPA kind of went down that path as well. And we see the same thing. I personally see the same thing unfolding a little bit with agentic solutions at the moment. Definitely. As well as we go in, we pick a process, great, we'll automate that. You got to kind of wheel it back, and you got to think about the principles of like Lean and Six Sigma and go, well, maybe that's not the right way to do it. Maybe we don't need 8 interventions here. Maybe we don't need to do it this way. Maybe we can make it a whole lot more streamlined. And then once we've got that, we've got clear decision points, that we've reduced the complexity, and we're in a position now where we can take, proper enterprise grade agents forward that are going to solve real enterprise problems. And for like Russ, we're still working through the understanding that framework and methodology, and we've made some great gains in that place. But it's a new way of thinking, and so I think that, like we saw with the ML days, there's just a natural adoption, learning, upskilling curve that's going to take some time to permeate into the everyday organizations. And I go back to AI 2027. I don't see, agents taking over the world and, starting to, self-align and become adversarial within the next 12 months. I think there's a lot more to do in this space. Just on that, I want to change gears a little bit now to technology. And so we've spoken a lot there around the idea of picking the right initiatives, which I 100% agree with. And I think you had some great views there on what you need to do to pick the right initiative. Answer a question somebody's asked, right? Don't answer a question nobody's asked. But underpinning that, to bring your program to life, is the other layers that you've got to bring. So technology people, operations now need to underpin your program. And you can have a lightweight program where I build something quite simplistic, or I have a program that is dealing with crisis, hypersensitive, super secure data that is building complex machine learning models. It's a different technology footprint that you need to bring that to life. And so I know you had to navigate those things. And so just with the technology footprint going into your role with ODA and being tasked with, not only we've got to deliver some social outcomes here, but I'm going to have to build a platform and a capability from a technology standpoint that's going to solve this problem, but it's going to scale to solve all the others. Again, like the first one, how did you start thinking about that?
Look, I've had an architecture forever, and it doesn't mean that it's not flexible, and I won't change it or open to new things, but I think the fundamentals don't really change. You've got to acquire some data, you've got to store some data, you've got to integrate some data, and then you've got to present that data back and use it. So I think at an outset, that framework's always in my mind, which is either an ODS, operational data store, an integration layer and a reporting layer, or semantic layers or tabular layers or cubes, or, whatever your language is. So I guess step one was, how do we get that in place? And that's where I guess a bit of experience and asking lots of questions and reading lots of things. I've got my own ways of doing things that have worked for a long time. And I also had a mindset that it's security first, functionality second, because the sort of data we were working with, we were, I guess, given a lot of trust, some without consent through legal processes. So legal consent, but not individual consent, to do really sensitive work. And so we had to uphold the highest levels of integrity and security in also building a platform that was usable and functional. So we had to navigate that and design something that was both robust, secure, flexible, scalable, and could take modern technology in, but still maintain levels of security and usability. Because, of course, the most secure data you lock up in 20 safes, get rid of all the people that know all the combinations, and no one can ever see it again. We needed to do this work near real time. So it was fun. interesting.
Yeah. How long was the? I want to double down on the security stuff because I think this is a super interesting topic that is really challenging for a lot of people. But you've navigated it probably at the pointy end of the stick. The start of your program to deploying a functional platform that you could actually do stuff. We often see organisations. And yours might have been a little bit different because of the nature you're dealing with, but you see people spend 6-12 months going through the define, design, implement, deploy cycle. How long did you guys spend sort of architecting and deploying?
So I guess from the outset, we had an interim environment built, which was literally just a series of VMs that we could chuck SQL and a whole bunch of tools on. So we had that rapid ability to do things once that environment was built, which took 6 months or so, I guess, through all the governance. And what that meant is we could get a result from acquiring data to producing an output is we had all that work done in 3 weeks. So we needed to do that to say, is it feasible? And it wasn't really a POC as much as it was a feasibility assessment to say, we've got this expectation in our mind about what you could do. If we gave you this and chucked it into the secure type world, what could you actually do with it? Yeah. So after that point, it was a whole bunch of design with some really good vendors and stakeholders, but really with that vision that I had in my head around, well, it's got to be secure and usable and that functional, non-functional requirement set. But to build it once we acquired all the hardware and all of those things was really a couple of months. I guess that's a lot of expertise and having learnt and made lots of mistakes in the past. Trying to make original mistakes rather than repeating others. So talking to lots of different people. But the fundamental premise was we needed to have a way to exchange or import data from across multiple departments in government and outside of government, multiple formats in near real time, store it, integrate it, report on it, and then disseminate it. And so that was our objective. But that's what we did. Yeah.
And now just to kind of dive into the security element. Now, we deploy platforms with a lot of organizations, work with a lot of different organizations. There is, and I know you've got a background in security as well, it's challenging. Most organizations will approach it somewhat differently, but it will always tend to the side of no. And so, and I know that a lot of people, obviously for the people that we're producing the podcast for, are probably navigating similar sorts of things. I mean, I'm starting a new program. I want to get my platform up. I'm going to work with data. I want to go to all these wonderful things. And then you've got to fill out the 220, questions in there, and you've got to navigate all that, or you've got to get like whatever it is you've got to do. I'm not saying it's unnecessary. I think that in where we're at today, that absolutely a level of applying security over what we do is absolutely necessary. There's a lot of risk out there. The attack surfaces are getting bigger, and you need to be able to secure your environment. But you've also got to be pragmatic as well in terms of letting innovation run its course, understanding the actual classification of the content that you're putting in. Like defense grade security for low level commercial information is an inhibitor of innovation, not in there. And so the challenge that we face is like, how do we work with security teams? And if you use the ODA example there, where you're working with hypersensitive data from across multiple agencies, centralizing that, governing that, securing that. I mean, it must have been a hell of a process to go through to get the tick and the green light to do that. Can you just unpack a little bit of that experience for us and how you got there in the end?
Yeah, sure. So look, cybersecurity is one element. Misuse is another element. And security is really that generic term that covers all of it. But you need to consider all the domains. There's governance. Are we putting the right rules in place for how we do and use things? The people, have we got the right people? Have we got the right trust frameworks? Do they protect themselves? So is there a situation that a person could do something wrong and another person couldn't observe it? So you're trying to put as many stacked controls in as you can. There's the, information security or the cyber security element, which is how we're reducing our attack surface, but still maintaining usability. And as you quite rightly said, it's about what we're trying to protect, but also who that could be valuable to and, what controls we need to put in place. And then often forgotten is the physical security. So how do we do that so that all of those systems work together? And I guess that's my secret sauce is I design systems that all of those things work together in harmony to provide security. It's not just one thing. And I guess I ask the questions that lots of people don't ask. So like the cloud, for example, is it inherently less secure? I don't have a $100 million security budget, so I'm assuming that it's a lot more secure.
Yeah, that's right.
But can your IT administrator log in from home with anyone sitting there watching the computer and do all the admin tasks, take off all the firewalls, and then your whole system's compromised? They're the things I worry about in designing those systems. I guess, where did I start? Number one, from the government context, there's the South Australian Protective Security Framework. There's a tool there that lets you assess the value of, once you are dealing with personal information and aggregates of personal information, you end up in those classified layers pretty quickly. Once you do that, there's a Commonwealth framework that you can follow that outlines all the physical, personnel and cyber requirements, including IRAP and ISM and things. So we started there. From the outset, the thing I got wrong was taking it as a prescriptive model. You need to have this level of cryptography on this. Actually, you don't. What you need to do is a risk assessment. So can we mitigate those controls in other less expensive and less cumbersome ways and still maintain the level of assurance we need? And that's tricky. So what it means in a simple sense is that if you need two people to do something and it's not a super high risk area, one control might be, you have half the password, I have half the password, and we sign that we're never going to share those passwords with each other. I'm not saying we did that, but there are pragmatic ways to get around things rather than expensive ones. So we went through and balanced all of that with that security first, functionality second mindset, and worked with lots and lots of different parties to make sure that we weren't overcooking things or undercooking things, but ultimately the risk stopped with me. So I'm not afraid to make those decisions. I made sure everything was documented so that if something went wrong, we could look back and say, okay, well, we made this decision because we were being pragmatic about this and we thought these controls would be sufficient. I also, given that we were heavily involved in contact tracing and COVID, and every South Australian or visitor here was thankfully giving us information about where they'd been, I actually asked the Auditor General to audit us proactively and produce a public report, which is online now, on our security posture without revealing all of our security secrets and models, to give the public assurance that we'd done the best we could. So it's not just the design and working with all the different teams, but it's also providing that assurance back. Your question about the data value, it's a really complicated one, and it depends who you ask. One of my colleagues and friends worked on what's now the Australian Computer Society guideline around something called a PIF, a personal information factor. And that could be a business information factor, could be anything. And one of the thought experiments we were running is, well, what about rainfall data? Of course, it's not you get it on BOM or whatever. But what if you knew that there were 3 partial properties next to each other, and this one, on average, got 40 mils more rain than the other 2? Suddenly that's more valuable. So is that information sensitive or not? You have to do that inside your own organisation with your own risk appetite and work out where your risk tolerance is. If it's not there, then considering things like differential privacy, using synthetic data, using analogs, preferably, given some of the high profile breaches, not taking production data and putting it into test environments to test things with, I'm assuming, the best intention, but actually not the same security controls. So there's certainly ways around it, but it's a dance. You've got to really work through that with your client and their risk tolerance, with your own risk tolerance, work out what happens when it goes pear-shaped, what level of accountability and responsibility are there, and I guess answering the so what, because if you've got a private business that's got their own IP, they're trying to be a first mover in the market on a product, they're going to have huge protections around their IP. When that product's released, maybe it's less. So there's a temporal element to that too. So I think it's just working through that. There are lots of good frameworks you can use as a basis for it. Lots of good people you can get advice from. But certainly in what we were doing, we needed to be exemplary and provide the best level of assurance to the public that we safeguarded their information to the best of our ability on all of those domains. So that's what we did.
Look, it's a really interesting area, and probably just to we're kind of talking about like low level security and risk management here. I just want to elevate up now. And you probably, like me, you sit and you talk to boards and executives about AI and what's coming. And there's 2 themes of conversation that happen. One is we're all in, we want to slice, we want the value and all that kind of stuff. The other one is the risk, just this level of risk, the unknown, the uncertainty. That you have the contrasting, perspectives playing out in a room. Like, one, let's just go fast, and whoa, hold on, where's our data going? What we're doing, all here, and just, I guess, from a detailed security background, running big programs and participating in informing and advising boards as well. What does that narrative need to look like to the board level to start to allay the fears of risk and the opportunity for value creation?
Look, it's really tricky, which is why I'm asking. But I think it's really understanding what your risk appetite is as a board or as a business. People have documents, but do they really live by that risk? So if we as a board have agreed that we've got a moderate risk appetite for failed projects with a view that we want to innovate, then you've got to accept that there's going to be a margin of error in there and things are going to go wrong. So, or we're going to fail the project. So it's really about what mitigation steps can you put in that are going to enable you to use the technology as quickly as possible and mitigate the risk to an acceptable level. So for example, if you've got a lot of personal information, then it could mean intercepting the data on the way to the model, like a public model, that you run a tool that says, we're going to take all the people out. We're going to map Jane Smith to person 1 and John Jones to person 2, send it to the model, and then we're going to re-identify the output when it comes back into our platform and say, okay, well, person 1 equals Jane Smith, so Jane Smith has got this proposed approach. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is relatively easy to do that. And you minimize the risk, because what information are we really sending to that model? I think going through the legal teams, reading all the terms and conditions, understanding them is fraught with problems. It doesn't mean ignore legal, but they're going to say no because it's too complicated. That's why you've always got to come back to your risk appetite statement, put in some pragmatic assessments. I think we've got to answer the so what. Is the value that we're getting offset by the risks that we're taking? And that's life. I think we lose sight of that and we go, big scary AI models. I don't think they really care about your minutes from your meeting. And if it got out, what would it mean? Could someone FOI, is the person in the meeting going to tell their friend what we just discussed? Okay, well, it's probably low risk. Would you then use it to write bids and proposals? That's a question that only you could answer in your business. You know, are you willing to put some of your IP out there or not? When it comes to agents, I think that's the opportunity that I haven't read the AI 2027 report yet, but to me, I mean, that's the beauty of those things is that if I had an agent with my knowledge in it, and I can sell that as part of their process, and I can assure that client that actually, no, we don't store any of your data. It's literally coming in. The agent of me is answering your questions and sending you back some thoughts, and I'll charge you for that. Then what's the risk in that process? It's no different to sending someone an email. So I think it's really about old school practices, risk management, risk mitigation, risk appetite, work out what it really means if that information got lost, have a real truth telling session, like, oh yeah, I did send that to my friend over here to look at. Oh, okay. So you've already sent it out, you know, but the bigger ones, there's certainly other models. So DeepSeek, you've seen the concerns around that from a security perspective. I run it on my laptop locally. It's a great model, but would I send my stuff to the internet? Probably not. So I think it's just balancing all of those things to the point for your organization at that stage and then going forward rather than just saying no.
Yeah, we run a containerized version called Factory LLM with all the different models running locally in a VM, self-contains everything. Look, it's really, it's hilarious, right? You run into the organization and you get you can't put that in there. It's got to be secured this way. You've got to do all these things. But by the way, we email it to 6 different
that's right.
business.
Got it on a USB. Just plug it into your laptop.
Cool. I just want to so we're kind of talking about strategic elements, building a technology platform, getting the right security footprint, but probably one of the most important things there is the people, finding the right people to drive these programs forward. Again, to go back through your experiences when you're building teams, what's been your approach? Or say, take the ODA as an example. How did you start? How did you think about what skill sets did you think about bringing in? What types of people were you looking for?
So there's an old recruitment and HR adage, which is you hire for skills and you fire for personality. So I do it the other way around, hire for personality and train the skills. I think there's a pretty traditional set of skills that you need. You're going to need some kind of business engagement. You're going to need some kind of a BA type role to interface between the requirements and the documentation and do that client service. You're going to need some analytical skills who either have statistical or analytical background, like how can we actually get some validated output from this thing? And you're going to need your engineering team to set up all your data pipelines. So I think from the outset, there's a standard sort of design for our work that you need, and you can add to that data scientists or actuaries or, whatever you need for your bespoke requirements. But I ran a very different kind of recruitment process and, you've now got 3 of my team here, so
did well,
hopefully they're performing as well as they did with me, but as I'm sure they will. I think number one is that recruitment processes as they stand now are not set up to get the right people, in my view. So I run a multiple stage recruitment process that is quite different. So we do the traditional interview. You kind of have to. Then I'll take him out for a coffee and say, all right, suit off. Who are you? What do you want out of your life and your career, and what makes you happy? So if you get up every morning and go, I can't wait to go to work, what is that for you? Is it solving a cool problem, coding, being passionate about social outcomes and justice? What is it? Because I want to find the right cultural fit. Then I'll do a Hogan's personality assessment, and not just to say, this is who this person is. But we talk a lot about diversity, and diversity is really important, right? Gender, representative of the community. But what we don't talk about is diversity of thinking. And a really dangerous environment is when everyone's the same, because no one's challenging, no one's speaking up. So I want a diverse team. And the Hogans helps do that. And also it helps me really understand them, because working with org psychs on what that means I can ask really good questions of referees. In these circumstances, how do they behave? Oh, I know what you're talking about, that kind of thing. And then I offer them the opportunity, if they want, to come and meet with the team, because they've got to like where they work too. It's not a one-way thing. And also then I talk to the team and say, what do you think? And you don't always get it right. It's impossible. And people change, and, all of those things too. But by and large, what I'm really proud of is building a really strong cultural team that people go, oh, I don't know if this person will fit. And then they're like, I know why they're here. Most of them are still friends and still catch up. But what it meant is that they worked well together. They could challenge each other. It wasn't all roses every day. They had complementary technical and, I guess, soft skills. And that when the challenges hit, that we had that resilience to do it. I'm just so proud of all of those people that have worked in ODA over the years, that this wasn't for the faint of heart. It was tough. It was tough to break down silos. Some of the technical challenges were tough. But I remember one with a COVID, and it was literally Christmas Eve, and something had gone a little bit off where it was meant to be.
Yeah, we got COVID Christmas Eve.
Did you? Okay. It was you.
It was probably us,
you. And I went in and said, look, don't worry, team, I'll handle it. And a couple that are here now working with you came in and went, we're not leaving till you leave, boss. Like, we're here in this together. And we were there till, 11 o'clock, went home, wrapped presents for our kids, and that's a culture. And that's not because they had to, because they were on call or anything else. That's a culture, and getting those right people. I think the other thing is that we hired against the mission. We were there to help better use of data across government, help save vulnerable kids, help drive different models, work out better economic data, help in emergency management situations. And the team really did that. And that bonds you too. So it's not only the selection, but, how do you keep those people engaged and motivated? And when they're not, have the honest conversation. Work's not fulfilling you, great, go find something else.
Obviously, if you're hiring engineers and data scientists, it's a hard technical capability, right? And, respectfully, you can be a wonderful person, but a terrible technologist.
Absolutely.
And so how do you get under the covers of, like, do you really have the technical grunt to do this job? And one, is it fully possible to test for that up front? It's challenging, right? And so how did you think about that? Obviously, and probably I'll frame this question in two ways. One is through the onboarding and just going, right, yep, you're a cultural fit, you've got commercial acuity, and you've demonstrated some technical capabilities there. Do you rigorously test for technical capabilities up front? And then once they're in the door, how do you monitor fit as you're going through? So maybe sort of start with the first bit and we'll come back to the second bit.
I used to. I don't anymore. I think it's an attitude and a personality thing. I got taught assembly. And then Pascal, COBOL. I can now write C# and Python. I did a lot in Perl. Those languages that I learned, no one uses anymore. Although I could probably get a lot of money in some old organizations and mainframes. But that doesn't mean I'm not capable of learning the new technology. And if someone was used to an on-prem environment, Azure's a whole new world. AWS, a whole new world. Google, a whole new world. They had to learn it. Every single person. And maybe it was luck. There is probably an element of that. You never know who's on the market at a particular time. All of them embrace that and learn because they had the foundations. And that's what I'm interested in. Do you know the right questions to ask? Do you have a learning approach? It is lifelong learning. Coding ML models wasn't a thing 30 years ago. So that's what I'm looking for. And I've been both deliberately through the process, but also a bit of luck, I think, being able to find those people, plus the kind of stack that we were using, no one had ever used before. We had really new technology. We had, I had my own ways of structuring the data that some went, wow, this is incredible. Some went, oh, I don't really understand why this is happening. And then later went, oh, now I understand it. Some went, you know what, I think I can make this better. Great, go do it. But you can't, I don't think, test up front for the technical skills and say, well, that's going to be sufficient, because they're going to hit a different technology, different problem. And it's whether they're going to be adaptable or learn both structured and unstructured. And also, are they going to help each other? I know the Teams chats were going hot with my team because it was like, can you check this code? Can you do this? Yeah. And, they'd sit there and have little huddles for half a day. And the other thing that I tried to do as much as possible was say, look, at least have half a day a week for yourself. Do something innovative for the team. I think I could do better. Better model for this, go build it. I want to go do some training. I want to learn this. I want to upskill. Can I go on a training course? I want to watch some YouTube videos on how to do this. All work related, of course, but take that time because I want people that want to be there, not have to be there. And the best way to do that is make sure that they're always available. The option's always available for them to go onto the open market and get a job. Not that they're stuck in some legacy technology working with me that they can't possibly work anywhere else. So that's all the mindset. Have I encountered people without the technical skills over my career? A couple, but not many. And I think the ones that we tested for might be able to pass the test in Python, but then you throw C# at them and they're like, I don't know how to do this. So
couple of things. I remember one very wise mentor of mine years ago when I was hiring. I used to hire for like intellectual grunt, right? I want the smartest people to come in and work for me, and that's great. And the advice I got, which I thought was beautiful, was empathy is really important. If you hire someone who is technically brilliant but devoid of empathy, you're hiring an asshole. Yeah. And it is going to be toxic for your culture. And so make sure there's a balance between the two. And I still remember that. I still have taken that with me. And it sounds like you reflect on the same thing there of saying that good people who are willing to learn, embrace things is very, very important. Probably more so than the technical grunt that you bring to the capability.
One cockroach can poison the whole water tank is the analogy that I got to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the same sort of thing. But I would say too that an environment with no conflict is also not healthy. Yeah. Because you end up with groupthink. And I think it was Jeff Bezos that has the written pro formas for each meeting and says, right, go away if you all agree until you disagree. I think it's also important that you have that too, because if it's too harmonious, it should always be respectful and empathetic. But if it's too harmonious and people aren't going, no, I don't agree with that, then you also got to question, well, have I got the mix right too? Yeah.
There's a direct side. In my early years, I played sport professionally and internationally. And one of the things you learn about high performance is tension. Yeah. Is that when there is expectation from other people on other teammates, not just downward from the coach, it drives tension, right? I'm expecting you to do what you're supposed to do. I'm expecting you to do the work. I'm expecting to not have to pick up the slack from you. It drives high performance. I think there's this natural thing of, if you want a high performance culture, you want a team that really achieves things, then you're going to want high performers, and high performers are naturally going to put pressure on other people to carry their weight.
Yeah, definitely. And also that old adage that A's hire A's and B's hire C's that Steve Jobs famous for talking about as well, is that if you create that environment, it attracts those excellent people. Yeah. Because they want to work with those other excellent people. If you have a command and control culture, then no one wants to work there. Yeah. Because you're the B hiring a bunch of C, and the A's are all working with each other, because high performing people want to work with high performing people. Yeah. But you've got to get that culture right. And I think Simon Sinek talks about that as well with the Navy SEALs, is that they'd rather have the person that's going to be a great teammate with a bit lower performance than the high performance that's not going to be a team player. And I think in their masculine Navy SEALs world, they say, I trust you with my life, but would I trust you with my wife? That kind of thing. But it's really, really important that you get that right cultural dynamic. Yeah. And when you get it wrong, that you correct it quickly. Yep. So
I just want to pick up on one thing. And I know you've kind of mentioned about going in on Christmas Eve and some of the challenges you've had to work through, especially as you become an executive and you're a family person and you're a father. And it's like something I've struggled with personally over the years as well, is that you can get completely consumed by the role. You want to grow a great company, you want to do great work, you work far too much, but you're also a dad, a husband, you're a friend, trying to balance all those things can be really hard. So when you've taken on things like, the COVID crisis and some of the other things that you've worked through that would have been extremely demanding on your time as a professional, but also as a family person, how have you gone about managing that, or maybe not just manage it, finding sanity and making your way through those types of situations?
It's such a personal thing. And I think balance itself's a really interesting concept, because if you try and work out what that should be yourself, certainly what I've found is you always fail, and every day you're going, oh, I've got the balance wrong. I think the reality is that the hustle of a crisis, forming a new organization, setting up a new team, being an entrepreneur, is that you have to make decisions, and I hesitated to say sacrifice, because you have to make decisions about where you're going to allocate your time and energy. And if you look at it over an extended period rather than a given day, it's really important to get that perspective too, because through COVID, I think there were weeks I was doing 100 hours on site in the office, still coaching district soccer with my kids and trying to spend some time with them and at home and doing my family and household jobs and things as well. And you have to kill sleep, the most important thing in your life, but you have to kill it because you can't. And for me, the driver is always the mission, and it's not so much self-sacrifice, but if I can help someone else, that's what drives me. So I don't mind, Yes, I didn't love every 11 p.m. or 2 a.m. phone call where I had to go into the office, but I still showed up for soccer training and tried to balance all of that. And I think it's hard being a parent to balance that, spending time with the kids and then also working and building a career and being mentally present, because you're thinking about something else when you really should be giving your attention to your family. But my perspective on that is that you actually need both. You need your kids to see that you're driven and doing these things and making these sacrifices. And hopefully they want to do that too, but also make sure that when you're there, you're as present as you can be.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's tricky. I wouldn't say I got it right, put on a few extra kilos and drop exercise and all those things, but it's about, well, are you going to correct that? In that extended period when you can rebalance it, take the downtime, take your leave, you are replaceable, but also the way I looked at it was take the opportunity too. This is a unique privilege that I was given, and I'll work my absolute hardest while I've been given that privilege, but at some point you've got to stop.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's great advice. I just want to close the loop on one thing, and then we'll get into a fireside, like a Fireside 5. So just one of the things we got here, we talked about before, and I just wanted to revisit this point in when we think about selecting initiatives and we think about the value element of it. It's very easy in a lot of organizations to go value as dollars, value as the P&L, okay, because you've got this hard metric that I can put my finger on and go, was that program successful? Well, did it deliver an ROI? Show me the return, show me the P&L. But for you, the value thing is a little bit different, right? Because you work in social policy and, and social well-being and all that, and that domain. So how did you navigate communicating benefit when you don't have a hard metric like dollars?
It's tricky. I think it's about your perspective and your time horizon. If you are selling something to someone in a shop that they want, like a hardware store or whatever, they're going to come in and buy that, whether you're curt to them or lovely to them. And they'll probably only buy one, and it doesn't really matter that much. If you've got a relationship with that person though, you're going to want to build that trust out. Actually, and many organizations, one hardware store I go to a lot does this as well. Really good customer service, which means that I'm going to keep coming back and back and back. So that interaction, which might be costly for them upfront in a bit of time, pays back over that extended period. And I think it's about measuring not the costs or the ROI on that individual incident or transaction, but actually looking at it as a lifetime cost. What does this do? And having spent 17 years in the works comp sector and then, another 8.5 in core government across a whole spectrum of things, I think those relationships and those KPIs that you can't measure, but that are most critical, are things like trust, are things like, did I have a good experience? Because those positive messages are going to carry them forward across their lifetime. And that's really the time frame we should be looking at ROI. If you're just doing a singular transaction, then it's probably less important and you can just focus on the dollars. But ultimately, those in those social spaces, those customer interactions and experiences are what's really important. The other thing that I found that it does is it gives you a buffer. And what I mean by that is that if you are providing that exemplary service, which costs you more time and effort, and something goes wrong, overall, those people are more likely to be forgiving because they understand that your intention has been to do right and we just had a little muck up and now we're going to fix it. Really different if you've had a poor experience and then something goes wrong. So if you look at the costs in that lean sort of model, what is our cost of failure? How much of that actually relates to how we do things as much as what we do? Then you can also put a metric on it around your ROI. But one of my other mentors said to me and the organisation that if we're in government, we have to be the best because people don't get a choice. So if you're in private sector, you ring up your bank, you don't like the service, switch banks. You don't like your insurer, switch insurer. Don't like your car, switch cars. But if you don't like your interaction with government, there's nowhere to go. So because of that, we have to be the best we possibly can in our constraints, budget, resources, everything else. I think if organisations adopted that mentality, that sort of win once, win again, and that empathy that we've spoken about and that customer service, that's what's really important. That's your competitive advantage as well. And you shouldn't shy away from thinking about those things, but also you don't want to do it for free forever because your company won't be here tomorrow. Right. But it is a different way of measuring ROI. There are formulaic things like net promoter score and things people use as well, but I don't think you can put a cost on that. And that's also your culture. For someone like you, everyone that represents Inside Factory is representing you.
That's right. Yeah.
So you've got to get that right.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I want to move quickly into what we call the Fireside 5.
Shoot.
Short question, short answer. If you could call yourself up the night before you started as the Chief Data Officer at what advice would you give yourself?
Sleep.
Wonderful. Where do you see the most impactful disruption from AI coming in the next 12 months?
I think in terms of the Clippy plus. I think augmenting what people are doing to save them time in the next 12 months is a realistic endpoint. That's what I use it for now. I need to do this presentation. I've done this. How can I make this better? Good. Write this presentation for me. Bad. So I think if we can get that a little bit more normalized, and again, sort of great work in the education department and rolling out EdChat, those kind of augmented tools, then we're starting to normalize it and also work out what its limitations are.
Yeah. Brilliant. Most hyped yet least impactful technology of the last 5 years?
AI.
I love it.
Outside of self-driving cars.
I like that one, self-driving cars for sure. Well, that was supposed to be here 10 years ago.
That's right. But, the technology is pretty phenomenal in the Tesla, right?
I have a Tesla, and they just released their full self-driving. We were just in San Francisco and we were on the Waymos. Amazing, right?
It is amazing.
The first couple of minutes in a Waymo, I was like, okay, but then I think we just took them for the rest of the entire trip. Was amazing. What's harder, finding great data talent or keeping them?
I'd say finding, because I don't think you need to keep them forever. I think it's best for people to be where they want to be. And if they want to stay, great. If they're going to thrive somewhere else, then we should let them do that and not, cling on. And if you create the right culture, you get them staying for as long as you can.
Beautiful. Love it. All right. Last one. What's one contrarian view about AI? Something you believe that most other people don't believe?
I don't think it's going to get to where people think it is. I think it's overhyped, that it's a tool, that there's sort of positive reinforcement happening in the communities that say how great it is. But I literally took a week of my life and looked back and went, how much of that involved AI and how much of it could in the future? And it was such a small percentage. Happy to be wrong. I think firm opinions loosely held is a good way to live, but I think it is super overhyped. And that at some point, we're going to look back like the MIT NANDA report and go, we've spent billions of dollars or trillions of dollars as a global economy on this thing, and it's really not made money for anyone other than Sam Altman and Elon Musk and a few of the people that charge us monthly subscriptions for our Replit, for our models.
Right. So it's such an interesting point that like a lot of the strong narrative coming out about the future is from product companies that need to raise capital to continue feeding the beast, right? So excellent. Well, look, mate, thank you so much for coming in. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.